The show in Washington right now is exhausting. The corruption, the fighting, the lying, the crisis, it's got to end. The reality is there's no going back, and there's no such thing as again in the real world. We can't look for greatness in the past. Right now, our country needs a fresh start. I'm Pete Buttigieg. I'm the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. When I arrived in office at the beginning of this decade, the national press said that our city was dying. People on the outside didn't believe our city had a future.
We propelled our city's comeback by taking our eyes off the rearview mirror, being honest about change, and insisting on a better future.
You know, I belong to a generation that is stepping forward right now. We're the generation that lived through school shootings, that served in the wars after 9/11, and we're the generation that stands to be the first to make less than our parents unless we do something different.
We can't just polish off a system so broken. It is a season for boldness and a focus on the future.
Good leadership brings out the best in us. The job of a leader is to call us to our highest values.
We stand for the better America that we know we can be. That's our message. It's not even complicated.
There's a new generation of voices emerging in our country, walking away from the politics of the past and ready to deliver on our priorities. There is no again in the real world. That's not a bad thing. We're ready for a fresh start.
We stand proud for our values. Let's go show the world. Thank you.
Not since Barack Obama was a candidate has someone ignited so much buzz so fast. He's 37 years old, a graduate of Harvard, a Rhodes Scholar, a Naval Reserve officer who was deployed to Afghanistan, and the mayor of a small city in Indiana, population 100,000, Pete Buttigieg. He says his 8 years leading South Bend, Indiana gives him more experience to be president than Donald Trump had. He gave me a tour of his hometown, which a decade ago was cited as one of America's 10 dying cities. The same year, Buttigieg was elected mayor.
How you doing?
So you don't mind being called Pete by this guy? You don't have to say Your Honor?
That's my name.
He's my mayor.
It'd be funny if I insisted on being called Your Honor. Hey, how are you? Good seeing you.
In South Bend, they just call him Pete, the hometown mayor who's suddenly a national celebrity.
Say hi to Mayor Pete.
You wake up in the morning, do you feel mayor?
Yeah, no way, yeah. Because the first thing you're doing is you're checking to see what happened overnight. If it wasn't something worth waking you up over, there's still stuff you need to know.
Is there a crime report you get?
I get incident reports as they happen, and then I get a monthly look at where the numbers are.
The city was in a decades-long decline. The Indianapolis Star called the business district a blighted ghost town. The tallest high-rise was empty. Today, investment is pouring in. There are new condos, parks, restaurants, even a nightly light display along the river. One of the mayor's proudest achievements, smart sewers.
So this little thing here contains a piece of equipment that can communicate wirelessly. And what it's doing is it's linking to a sensor that goes down through that PVC tube down there.
Yeah.
And then that is giving you a level reading on what the level is here. So if you know that this one's starting to get close to topping out, you can reroute the flow to other places, avoiding an overflow.
I bet you Donald Trump's never had one of these experiences.
I doubt it.
Wow, he lives in a White House. It's really a beautiful house. I was just telling Chris, it's great because it's like, it just feels like you live here.
It's definitely home. This is about as orderly as it's been, mostly because we're not here very much.
Pete Buttigieg is the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. He's 37 years old, openly gay, happily married, a veteran who served in Afghanistan. He's a devout Christian, and he's running for president of the United States.
I noticed that you guys don't have a TV here. Do you have a TV upstairs?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Okay.
We got our Game of Thrones fix last night. Don't worry.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Like,
We don't want our living room to like revolve around a TV because we also like on the trail you spend so much time like this that it's nice to be home and just have a board game or a fireplace or a dog or something else to look at that isn't a screen.
If I went into the past, I'd go just 20 years back so I could find a teenage boy wondering how he could belong in this world. If I could put my arm around him and tell him that he would not only find belonging in his hometown, that he would have a hand in transforming the neighborhoods he knew as a boy. To tell him that one rainy April day, before he even turns 40, he'll wake up to headlines about whether he's rising too quickly into becoming a top-tier contender for the American president.
There are a lot of people, particularly people who are voting in the Democratic primary, who think that it's time for a woman president or would like another president of color. Why should we have another white male president?
So I'm explaining my case for the presidency in terms of what I seek to do with the office. There are lots of reasons why various candidacies are historic, and we can talk about the benefits that would come from having somebody who is different in that office, whether it be a white gay male or a straight woman of color or an African American male, whatever it is. All I can speak to is who I am and what I am and how that informs me. And I think each of us have that responsibility. There's a lot of disappointment which I share, that we didn't get a woman as president in 2016. Now it's 2020, we have a historically diverse field. That's a welcome thing, and it's a good reflection on our party.
3, 2, 1.
Pete's marriage to Chasten is a big political asset because it allows him to position himself as a happily married, devoutly Christian family man who happens to be gay.
I was really nervous after our first date, after that first beer at Fiddler's, and then we walked down to the Cubs game, and I was so nervous that when we left that dinner, he would become someone different than I had saw on the opposite side of that table, and he's been the exact same guy ever since that first date. It has been wonderful watching him take care of this community.
Chasten has become a social media star for posting pictures of their 2 dogs and for generally just being a hilarious online presence. He also kind of helps to lighten Pete up a little bit because Pete can get a little serious. It's not just that Pete is the first openly gay person to run for president. It's that his marriage symbolizes what is politically possible in the United States of America.
I came out at a much younger age. I studied abroad in high school. It was the first time in my life I had friends who told me it was okay to be who I was. And by the time I came home from studying abroad, I was ready to come out. Being gay was not culturally acceptable where I grew up, mostly for a lack of understanding. And so my parents, my family, and I were just at a crossroads. There was a lot of hurt, and I wound up leaving home for a while. I slept on some friends' couches. I slept out of my car for a while, just trying to figure it out. And meanwhile, back home, my parents were doing a lot of soul searching. I'm very lucky that my parents took that time to ask questions and called me home. And I'm so grateful that they sought to understand.
How do you think for both of you the process of coming out in largely conservative communities has informed how you think of how people change their mind?
I think part of it's understanding, again, that all of us do or say things we might regret, and all of us can do better. You know, when I came out, some of the people who had traded in the most insulting, casual, homophobic humor in the military with me, for example, were among the very first to reach out and say, hey, I got your back, and I didn't know this, and I hope that I never hurt you. Unsolicited. It was amazing, actually. Which is why we got to get away from this kill switch mentality that we see. You know, you put one foot wrong or you say something inartfully, and you get this feedback that's like, I always liked you, but you said this one thing and now you're dead to me forever. Like this idea that we just sort people into baskets of good and evil ignores the central fact of human existence, which is that each of us is a basket of good and evil. And the job of politics is to summon the good and beat back the evil.